Hashtag they laughed at Earth's wilderness. Part 1. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mixture of contempt and amusement as Ambassador Chunwei stepped forward to address the assembled delegates. Floating platforms arranged in concentric circles held representatives from 47 different species, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, electromagnetic pulses, and traditional speech filtered through universal translators. The humans wish to contribute to the war effort, announced Councillor HFY, his crystalline form shimmering with what could only be described as barely contained laughter. The Zephyrian's voice resonated through harmonic frequencies that made several nearby delegates' sensory organs flutter with amusement. Ambassador Chun maintained his composure, though his knuckles whitened slightly as he gripped the podium. Earth formally requests assignment to frontline operations against the Court Hack Empire, he stated clearly, his words carrying across the vast chamber. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Laughter erupted from dozens of species and forms ranging from the mollusk confederation's bubbling emissions to the sharp chittering of the insectoid hives. Even the usually stoic granite folks' representatives showed signs of mirth through subtle shifts in their mineral composition. High Counselor HFY, a towering reptilian whose scales shifted color with emotional states, leaned forward on her platform. Her scales had turned a brilliant amber, the reptilian equivalent of uncontrollable amusement. Ambassador Chun, she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets across 3 galactic wars. With all due respect to your species' enthusiasm, perhaps you should reconsider. The Court Hack Empire has been expanding across the Outer Rim for 30 standard years, Chun replied, his voice steady. They've conquered 14 systems and enslaved billions. Earth believes we can make a difference. This statement triggered another wave of amusement throughout the chamber. Councillor HFY's form brightened until his crystalline structure was nearly blinding. Ambassador, your species has been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years. The most complex conflict you've engaged in involved, what was it? Throwing metal projectiles at each other. Nuclear weapons, Chin corrected quietly. Ah yes, nuclear weapons. Tessa's scales shifted to a deeper amber. How quaint. Meanwhile, the Court Hack Empire fields plasma artillery that can melt mountains, void ships that phase through normal space, and bioweapons that can adapt to any planetary environment within hours. The ambassador from the Ethereal Collective, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering force field, pulsed with patterns that the translator rendered as condescending laughter. Young human, the Court Hack have been fighting interstellar wars since before your species discovered fire. Their warriors are bred from birth for combat across every conceivable environment. They've conquered civilizations that have been spacefaring for millennia. Chin took a deep breath, remembering his briefing materials and the weight of Earth's hopes resting on his shoulders. Counselor, we understand the challenges, but Earth has something unique to offer. Our planet is unusual in terms of biodiversity and environmental extremes. Unusual how? Tia's scales shifted to curious green, though traces of amusement still colored their edges. Earth contains environments that most species would consider uninhabitable. Dense jungles where visibility drops to meters, swamplands that shift and change daily, mountain ranges where the air is too thin for most beings to function. Our species evolved not just to survive in these places, but to thrive in them. The chamber fell into a relative quiet, though Chan could still sense the undercurrent of skepticism flowing through the assembled delegates. HFY's form dimmed slightly as he accessed his species' vast databases. According to our surveys, your planet does indeed have unusually hostile biomes. However, the Court Hack Empire conquers worlds by orbital bombardment and atmosphere processors. They don't engage in, ground warfare in such environments. That's exactly why we might be effective, Chun pressed forward. Intelligence reports indicate the Court Hack are establishing ground bases on conquered worlds to extract resources and process populations. These bases are often located in areas they consider naturally defensible, places other species avoid. High Counselor HFY exchanged a look with several other senior delegates. Her scales shifted through several colors before settling on cautious yellow. Ambassador Chun, even assuming your species has some advantage in hostile environments, The Korthak Empire fields the most advanced military technology in the known galaxy. Their individual soldiers are enhanced with biomechanical implants. Their armor can withstand direct hits from plasma cannons, and their weapons can level city blocks. We understand the technological disparity, Chen acknowledged. But warfare isn't always about having the best technology. Sometimes it's about adapting to circumstances your enemy hasn't prepared for. The insectoid delegate, speaking through rapid mandible clicks, interjected. Human Ambassador Chun, our hive mind calculations show probability of success negligible. Korthak warriors superior in every measurable parameter. Chun pulled out a small device from his jacket, a simple tablet displaying Earth's military history. Counselors, may I share some historical examples from our planet? THYSSK gestured permission, her scales shifting to patient blue. 3,000 years ago, a small force of 300 warriors from a city-state called Sparta held off an army of hundreds of thousands at a narrow mountain pass. 2,000 years ago, nomadic tribes with basic horses and bows conquered one of the largest empires in our world's history. 500 years ago, a small island nation defeated the most powerful naval force of their time using superior tactics and environmental knowledge. Primitive conflicts irrelevant, chittered the insectoid delegate. Modern warfare different paradigm. Is it? Chen asked. Even in our most recent conflicts, we've seen technologically inferior forces defeat superior ones through environmental adaptation and unconventional tactics. Small groups of fighters familiar with jungle environments have held off mechanized armies for decades. Desert nomads have frustrated the most advanced military forces by using terrain and weather that others couldn't navigate. Vexai's form pulsed thoughtfully. You're suggesting that environmental knowledge could overcome technological superiority? I'm suggesting that every species in this chamber has adapted to their homeworld's specific conditions. But Earth conditions are extreme by galactic standards. Our soldiers train in environments that would kill most beings before they could even deploy their advanced technology. The chamber buzzed with various forms of communication as delegates conferred among themselves. Chun waited, knowing that this moment would determine whether humanity would have a chance to prove itself or be relegated to manufacturing supplies in the safety of the core worlds. Finally, THYSSK called for order. Her scales had shifted to contemplative purple. Ambassador Chun, the Council appreciates Earth's willingness to contribute. However, we cannot in good conscience assign an untested species to frontline operations against the Korthak Empire. Chen's heart sank, but THYSSK continued. However, we are willing to offer a compromise. There's a situation developing in the Kepler 442 system. A Korthak Advanced Force has established a resource extraction facility on the planet Verdania. The planet is challenging. Dense jungle covering 90% of the landmass, extreme humidity, dangerous predators, and atmospheric conditions that interfere with most forms of advanced technology. The High Counselor's scales shifted to amber again, though this time it seemed less mocking and more genuinely curious. Previous attempts to dislodge the Korthak from Verdania have failed. The Zephyrian Crystal Marines couldn't maintain equipment function in the humidity. The ethereal collective found their energy forms dispersed by the thick atmosphere. Even the Granite Folk's heavy assault units became bogged down in the unstable terrain. What kind of mission parameters are we talking about? Chen asked, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. Reconnaissance initially, Vexai interjected. We need intelligence on Korthak operations planetside. If your species can gather useful information where others have failed, we might reconsider broader participation in the war effort. Chen nodded slowly. How many personnel will we be authorized to deploy? Start small, THYSSK advised. Perhaps a dozen of your finest warriors? We'll provide transport to the system and basic equipment, but you'll be operating independently once you reach Verdania's surface. The ambassador from the Mollusk Confederation bubbled something that translated as suicide mission for primitives. Wasteful, but educational. Chun ignored the comment and focused on THYSSK. High Counselor, if we accept this mission, and if we succeed in gathering intelligence, what would that mean for Earth's future participation? THYSSK's scales cycled through several colors before settling on honest orange. Ambassador, If your people can accomplish what our most elite forces could not, it would change certain perceptions about human capabilities. And if we fail, then we'll have lost 12 humans instead of 12,000. Vexai's crystalline form pulsed with pragmatic light. From a strategic perspective, it's an acceptable risk. Chun straightened his shoulders and looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. Some still showed signs of amusement, others appeared curious, and a few seemed almost sympathetic to what they clearly viewed as humanity's naive enthusiasm for a hopeless cause. High Counselor, Chun said formally, Earth accepts the mission to Verdania. The chamber erupted in surprised buzzing, clicking, and electromagnetic pulses. Clearly, many delegates had expected humanity to decline what was obviously a dangerous assignment. THYSSK raised a clawed hand for silence. Very well. You have 72 hours to select your team and prepare for departure. Transport will be provided to the edge of court-hack-controlled space. After that, you'll be on your own until extraction can be arranged. As the session concluded and delegates began dispersing to their various platforms and transport vessels, Chun remained at the podium for a moment, processing what had just occurred. Earth had been given a chance, albeit a dangerous one, to prove that humanity belonged in the galactic community's military efforts. His communication device chimed with an encrypted message from Earth Command. They had been monitoring the session and were already mobilizing a response team. Chun smiled grimly as he read the names on the preliminary roster. Soldiers who had spent their careers fighting in the most inhospitable environments Earth had to offer. Let the galaxy laugh at Earth's wilderness. Soon, they would understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their ability to turn any environment, no matter how hostile, into their home field advantage. The real test was about to begin. They laughed at Earth's wilderness. Part 2, the transport vessel Galactic Unity dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system with a subtle vibration that marked successful faster-than-light travel. Master Sergeant Maria Santos pressed her face against the small porthole, getting her first glimpse of Verdania through the ship's sensors. The planet appeared as a green-blue marble streaked with white clouds, deceptively peaceful from this distance. Doesn't look too bad from up here, muttered Corporal Jake Morrison, adjusting his gear for the 100th time since they'd left Earth. The young Marine had trained in the Louisiana bayous and thought he knew what to expect from hostile environments. That's what they all say, replied Sergeant Kim Chun, no relation to the ambassador, but sharing his calm demeanor under pressure. She'd spent 8 years with special forces in Southeast Asia, where she'd learned that the most beautiful landscapes often harbored the deadliest surprises. The team of 12 represented the best Earth had to offer for this type of mission. Santos had personally selected each member based on their experience in extreme environments. There was Petrov, a Russian Spetsnaz veteran who had operated in Siberian conditions that would kill most humans in minutes. Williams, a former British SAS operative who had spent years fighting in tropical environments. Chun, with her expertise in jungle warfare. Morrison, young but brilliant with electronics and communications. Captain Elena Rodriguez, the team leader, floated toward them in the low gravity of the transport's common area. Her background included operations in the Amazon rainforest, where she'd learned that technology was only as good as your ability to keep it functioning in impossible conditions. Listen up, Rodriguez called, bringing the team together for their final briefing. We're getting dropped in stealth pods about 50 kilometers from the Court-Hack base. Intelligence suggests they've established a processing facility in a clearing they carved out of the jungle. She activated a holographic display showing Verdania's surface. The planet was indeed almost entirely covered in dense vegetation, with only scattered clearings and waterways breaking the green canopy. According to Galactic Council records, the vegetation on Verdania is roughly equivalent to Earth's tropical rainforests, but more aggressive. The trees grow faster, the undergrowth is thicker, and the predators are larger. How much larger? Asked Private First Class Anna Kowalski, checking her rifle for the dozenth time. The young woman had grown up hunting in the Polish wilderness and had nerves of steel, but she believed in being prepared. Some of the aerial scans suggest predators up to 30 meters in length, Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly. The team exchanged glances. 30 meters was larger than most Earth dinosaurs had been. The good news, Rodriguez continued, is that the same conditions that make this planet hell for us also make it hell for the court hack. Their technology doesn't function well in high humidity, and their enhanced soldiers apparently have trouble with the atmospheric composition. Something about the oxygen-nitrogen mix being too rich for their respiratory systems. Warrant Officer Thomas Okafor, a Nigerian engineer who had spent years maintaining equipment in the Congo, raised his hand. What about our tech? Are we going to have the same problems? That's where we have an advantage, Rodriguez smiled. Everything we're carrying was specifically designed for Earth's most hostile environments. Sealed electronics, corrosion-resistant materials, redundant systems. The Council's fancy energy weapons wouldn't last a day down there, but our kinetic weapons should function fine. The intercom crackled to life with the voice of the Zephyrian pilot. Human warriors, we approach deployment zone. Stealth pods ready for launch. Rodriguez nodded to her team. Remember, our mission is reconnaissance first. We need to find out what the court hack are doing on Verdania, how many forces they have, and what their weaknesses might be. We're not there to fight unless absolutely necessary. And if it becomes necessary, asked Sergeant David Park, a Korean-American who had served with distinction in mountain warfare units. Then we adapt and overcome, Rodriguez replied. That's what humans do. The team moved to the deployment bay, where 12 stealth pods waited. Each pod was barely large enough for one person, and their equipment designed to slip through planetary defenses undetected. The technology was borrowed from the Ethereal Collective, though modified with human redundancy systems. Santos strapped herself into her pod, running through the mental checklist she'd developed over 20 years of military service. Weapons secure, electronics sealed, emergency beacon functional, survival gear accessible. Around her, the rest of the team was going through similar preparations. The countdown began in the pilot's harmonic tones, translated through their comm systems. Launch in 30 seconds. Good hunting, human warriors. Rodriguez's voice came through their private channel. See you on the ground, people. Stay sharp. The launch was surprisingly gentle. Just a soft push as the pods were ejected from the transport vessel. Santos watched through her small window as Verdania grew larger, its green surface resolving into individual trees and rivers. The pod stealth systems kept them invisible to most sensors, but Santos knew that once they hit the jungle canopy, they'd be truly on their own. The first sign that Verdania was different from Earth came during atmospheric entry. Santos felt her pod shudder as they hit air that was noticeably thicker and more humid than Earth standard. Her environmental readings showed humidity levels at 98%, higher than most Earth rainforests ever reached. The pods deployed their emergency parachutes automatically as they descended through the canopy. Santos braced for impact, knowing that jungle landings were always unpredictable. Her pod crashed through multiple layers of vegetation before finally coming to rest wedged between two massive tree trunks. Santos popped the pod's emergency release and immediately regretted it as Verdania's atmosphere hit her like a physical blow. The air was so humid it was almost like breathing water, and the temperature was a sweltering 42 degrees Celsius. The smell was overwhelming, a mixture of rotting vegetation, exotic flowers, and something else she couldn't identify. She activated her comm system and heard the welcome sounds of her teammates checking in one by one. Everyone had landed within a 2-kilometer radius, which was better than they'd hoped for. Sound off with status reports. Rodriguez's voice came through clearly despite the atmospheric interference. Santos, green and mobile. Pod stuck in a tree, but I'm on the ground. Morrison green. Electronics are all functional. Humidity seals holding. Chun green. Already spotted 3 different species of predator, but they seem more curious than aggressive. One by one, the team reported successful landings with minimal equipment damage. Rodriguez's voice carried satisfaction as she coordinated their initial movements. Excellent. Form up at Rally Point Alpha for equipment check and mission briefing. Watch your step. The ground cover here is thicker than anything we trained for. Santos began moving through the underbrush toward the rally point, immediately understanding what Rodriguez meant. The vegetation on Verdania wasn't just dense, it was aggressive. Vines seemed to reach for her as she passed, and The ground was so soft and unstable that each step required careful placement. Within minutes, her boots were caked with mud that had the consistency of glue. The sounds of Verdania were unlike anything she'd experienced on Earth. The jungle hummed with constant activity, bird-like creatures calling from the canopy, insects buzzing in swarms, and deeper sounds that suggested the presence of large predators moving through the undergrowth. She reached a rally point to find Chun already there, crouched behind a fallen log that was easily 3 meters in diameter. "How long has that been down?" Santos asked. Chun shook her head. "It's not down. It's still growing horizontally. The whole ecosystem here seems to grow in every direction at once." As the rest of the team assembled, Rodriguez spread out a waterproof map showing their position relative to the suspected Courthack base. "We're here." She pointed to a spot marked with a red X. The base is approximately 47 kilometers northeast. Aerial reconnaissance suggests they've cleared about a square kilometer of jungle for their facility. "How are we going to cover that distance in this terrain?" Park asked, wiping sweat from his face despite the cooling systems in his environmental suit. "Carefully," Rodriguez replied, "and quietly. We'll move in 2-person teams, maintaining comm contact but staying spread out. The canopy should provide cover from aerial surveillance, but we need to assume the Courthack have ground sensors." Okafor held up his handheld scanner. "I'm getting some interesting readings. The electromagnetic interference down here is intense. It's like the whole jungle is generating some kind of bioelectric field. Is that going to affect our equipment?" Rodriguez asked. "Actually, it might help us," Okafor replied, his engineering mind already working on the implications. "If their sensors work like most Galactic tech, this interference could mask our signatures pretty effectively." Rodriguez nodded. "All right, people. We move out in pairs. Stay alert, stay quiet, and remember, we're here to observe, not engage. Any questions?" Morrison raised his hand. "What if we encounter Courthack patrols? Avoid them if possible. If confrontation is unavoidable." Rodriguez's expression hardened. "Remember that we're representing humanity out here. Show them what Earth's children can do." As the teams began moving out through the dense undergrowth, Santos found herself partnered with Chun, which suited her fine. The sergeant had a reputation for being able to move through hostile terrain like a ghost. They had barely traveled a kilometer when Chun suddenly held up her hand for a stop. Santos froze, straining her senses for whatever had caught Chun's attention. Through the thick vegetation ahead, she could hear something moving, something large and mechanical, judging by the rhythmic footsteps and occasional metallic sounds. Santos and Chun exchanged glances and began moving carefully toward the sound. They crept forward until they could see through a gap in the foliage. In a small clearing ahead, 2 figures were moving in what appeared to be a patrol pattern. The beings were unmistakably Courthack, tall, insectoid creatures with natural armor plating and, for arms, each ending in razor-sharp claws. But what caught Santos's attention was their obvious discomfort. Both aliens were moving sluggishly, their usual fluid motions hampered by the humid air. Their breathing apparatus was working overtime, and Santos could see moisture condensing on their equipment. One of them paused to wipe condensation from what appeared to be a scanner, muttering something in their clicking language. Chun activated her recording equipment and began documenting everything they observed. The Courthack were clearly struggling with Verdania's environment just as much as the Galactic Council forces had. Their advanced armor was showing signs of corrosion, and their weapons were sealed in moisture-proof cases that they had to open each time they wanted to use their equipment. After observing the patrol for 20 minutes, Santos and Chun began moving parallel to the aliens' path, hoping to learn more about their patrol patterns and equipment limitations. What they discovered exceeded their expectations. The Courthack weren't just uncomfortable in Verdania's environment. They were actively being defeated by it. Their technology was failing at an alarming rate. Their soldiers were exhausted from fighting the humidity and heat, and their usual tactical advantages were neutralized by terrain they couldn't navigate effectively. As they watched the patrol struggle through increasingly difficult terrain, Santos began to realize that Earth's contribution to the war effort might be far more significant than anyone had imagined. The question was whether they could survive long enough to report their findings back to the Galactic Council. The real mission was just beginning. Hashtag they laughed at Earth's wilderness. Part 3. 3 days into their reconnaissance mission, Captain Rodriguez crouched in a natural observation blind formed by massive twisted roots, studying the Court-Hack base through her enhanced binoculars. What she saw confirmed their growing understanding that Verdania was proving to be the aliens' worst nightmare. The facility spread across the cleared square kilometer like a wound in the jungle's flesh. Prefabricated structures made from the Court-Hack's standard composite materials were already showing severe degradation. Green stains covered most surfaces where Verdania's aggressive plant life was attempting to reclaim the space. Several buildings appear to have been abandoned entirely, their walls buckled and roofs partially collapsed under the weight of rapidly growing vegetation. "Count," whispered Warrant Officer Okafor, who was positioned beside her with recording equipment. "I'm seeing maybe 60 Court-Hack total," Rodriguez replied quietly. Intel suggested they deployed a full battalion. That's roughly 300 soldiers. "Where are the rest?" Rodriguez adjusted her view to scan the medical facilities visible through the transparent walls of what appeared to be a treatment center. "I think they're sick." Through her enhanced optics, she could see dozens of Court-Hack lying on medical platforms while their medics worked frantically. The aliens' natural armor plating, usually a dark gray-green, had taken on a sickly yellow tinge. Several appeared to be struggling with respiratory issues, their breathing apparatus working at maximum capacity. Okafor activated his environmental scanner. "The spore count in this area is incredible. Whatever's in Verdania's air, their filtration systems aren't handling it." Rodriguez keyed her comm unit for a team-wide update. "All units, this is Alpha. Status report." Chen's voice came through clearly from her position on the eastern perimeter. "Beta team observing supply operations. Their equipment failure rate is approximately 60%. They're cannibalizing non-essential gear just to keep basic systems running." Morrison's voice followed from the southern approach. "Charlie team has eyes on their landing zone. 3 ships down for maintenance. Crews working around the clock just to keep them from being overgrown. It's like the jungle is actively trying to eat their technology." Park checked in from the western side. "Delta team monitoring patrol routes. They've abandoned 3 checkpoints in the last day alone. Patrols are down to 50-meter effective range due to equipment failures." Rodriguez felt a grim satisfaction. The Court-Hack Empire's reputation for technological superiority meant nothing here. Verdania was doing what no Galactic Council fleet had managed. It was defeating them through simple, relentless environmental pressure. "All teams maintain observation posts. We need at least 2 more days of data before extraction," she ordered. As night fell over Verdania, the jungle transformed into something even more alien and hostile. Bioluminescent plants began glowing with an eerie blue-green light, and the sounds of nocturnal predators echoed through the thick air. Rodriguez settled in for a long night of observation, noting how the Court-Hack base's external lighting flickered and failed repeatedly despite constant repair efforts. Around midnight, her patience was rewarded with unexpected intelligence. A heavily guarded convoy emerged from the central command structure, moving toward what appeared to be a communication array. Rodriguez counted 8 Court-Hack guards escorting a single figure whose armor bore the distinctive markings of a high-ranking officer. "Okafor, are you getting this?" she whispered. "Recording everything. That's either a sector commander or a fleet admiral, based on the escort protocol." They watched as the convoy reached the communication array and began what appeared to be an emergency transmission. The officer gestured frantically while technicians worked to boost the signal through Verdania's electromagnetic interference. Rodriguez activated her directional microphone and began recording audio. While she couldn't understand the Court-Hack language directly, the tone was unmistakable: panic, frustration, and what sounded distinctly like a request for evacuation. "They're calling for help," she whispered to Okafor. "Or reporting mission failure," he replied. The transmission continued for over an hour before the convoy returned to the command structure. Rodriguez made careful note of the communication protocols and timing, information that could prove vital for future operations. The next morning brought developments that exceeded even Rodriguez's optimistic projections. Santos and Chen reported that an entire section of the base had been abandoned overnight. The Court-Hack were consolidating their forces into an increasingly smaller defensive perimeter. "They're not retreating," Chen observed as they watched aliens moving equipment and personnel. They're dying. Santos pointed to a work detail struggling to move a piece of heavy machinery. Look at how they're moving. That's not tactical repositioning. They don't have enough healthy personnel to maintain full operations. Rodriguez began formulating a new plan. The mission parameters had called for reconnaissance only, but the situation was evolving beyond their original scope. The court hack weren't just struggling with Verdania's environment. They were being systematically defeated by it. All teams prepare for close reconnaissance, she ordered. We're going to get inside their perimeter for detailed intelligence gathering. The response was immediate disagreement from her team leaders. Park's voice carried concern. Captain, that's way beyond mission parameters. We're supposed to observe and report, not conduct infiltration ops. The situation has changed, Rodriguez replied. We have an opportunity here to gather intelligence that could change the entire war. The Council needs to know exactly how and why Verdania is defeating the court hack. Morrison's voice joined the discussion. The risks are enormous, Captain. If we're captured or killed, Earth loses its chance to prove itself. Rodriguez considered this carefully. The young Marine was right about the risks, but wrong about the implications. If we succeed in gathering this intelligence, Earth doesn't just prove itself. We become indispensable to the war effort. She paused, letting that sink in. Every species in the Galactic Council has tried to dislodge the court hack from environmental strongholds and failed. If we can show them not just that humans can operate in these conditions, but that we can exploit them strategically. Chen's voice cut through the discussion. The captain's right. This isn't just about completing a mission anymore. This is about establishing humanity's role in galactic warfare. Rodriguez made her decision. We proceed with infiltration. Morrison and Kowalski will establish a communication relay for emergency extraction. Park and Williams will provide overwatch. The rest of us go in. As darkness fell for the second night, Rodriguez led Santos, Chun, and Okafor toward the court hack perimeter. They moved through the dense undergrowth like ghosts, their training in Earth's most hostile environments serving them well on Verdania. The first challenge was getting past the court hack sensors, but Okafor's assessment proved correct. The jungle's electromagnetic interference made their movement virtually undetectable. The bigger challenge was navigating terrain that seemed designed to trap and kill intruders. They spent 2 hours covering barely 300 meters, carefully avoiding bioluminescent plants that could give away their position and predators whose eyes gleamed in the darkness. Rodriguez felt sweat pooling in her environmental suit despite its cooling systems, but pressed forward. The court hack perimeter was a joke by their usual standards. Guard posts that should have been manned by 2 soldier teams were down to single sentries, many of whom appear to be struggling just to stay conscious in Verdania's oppressive atmosphere. Rodriguez led her team to a position where they could observe the main compound. What they saw was a military force in complete disarray. Equipment lay abandoned where it had failed. Soldiers moved with the sluggish motions of beings fighting a losing battle against an environment that was slowly killing them. But most importantly, they could see into the command structure itself. Through transparent walls designed to showcase court hack technological superiority, they watched officers working frantically over tactical displays showing their empire's broader military situation. Can you enhance the audio pickup? Rodriguez asked Okafor. Working on it, he replied, adjusting his equipment. The electromagnetic interference is actually helping. It's masking our scanning while still allowing directional reception. For the next 6 hours, they recorded everything. Tactical discussions, casualty reports, equipment failure assessments, and, most crucially, strategic communications with other court hack facilities throughout the galaxy. What they learned changed everything they thought they knew about the war. The court hack empire wasn't just struggling on Verdania. They were facing similar problems on dozens of worlds where they'd established bases in hostile environments. Jungle planets, swamp worlds, Arctic conditions, volcanic regions. Anywhere the environment was actively hostile to their technology and biology. The Empire had built its expansion strategy around technological superiority and the assumption that they could terraform or control any environment they encountered. They had never considered that some environments might be fundamentally incompatible with their approach to warfare. We need to get this intelligence back to the Council immediately, Rodriguez whispered. This isn't just about one planet. This could reshape the entire war. As dawn approached, they began their careful withdrawal. But just as they reached the tree line, their luck ran out. A court-hack patrol, moving far from their usual route in apparent desperation, stumbled directly into their extraction path. Rodriguez found herself face-to-face with 4 enemy soldiers, their weapons raised, and their eyes reflecting the hatred of species that had never known defeat until they encountered environments like Verdania. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the two groups stared at each other across a distance of barely 10 meters. Then, Rodriguez spoke quietly to her team. "Remember what I said about showing them what Earth's children can do?" The jungle was about to become a classroom, and humanity was about to teach the galaxy's most feared warriors a lesson they would never forget. They laughed at Earth's wilderness. Part 4 the confrontation lasted exactly 47 seconds, though Rodriguez would later swear it felt like an hour. The lead court-hack warrior raised its plasma rifle, but before it could fire, the weapon sparked and died, another casualty of Verdania's humid atmosphere. The alien's frustrated snarl echoed through the jungle as it drew its secondary weapon, a wicked curved blade that gleamed with molecular sharp edges. Rodriguez had been in countless combat situations, but never had she felt so perfectly in her element. While the court-hack stumbled through knee-deep mud and fought to maintain their footing on unstable ground, she and her team moved like they were born to this environment. Chun disappeared into the undergrowth with a fluid motion that seemed impossible in such dense terrain. Santos flanked left, while Okafor moved right, all of them instinctively using the jungle's natural cover and obstacles to their advantage. The court-hack, despite their enhanced reflexes and superior strength, found themselves fighting not just for humans, but Verdania itself. The first alien lunged at Rodriguez with its blade extended, but its foot caught in a tangle of roots disguised by Verdania's deceptive ground cover. As it stumbled, Rodriguez stepped aside and brought her rifle stock down on the creature's helmet with precision born from hundreds of hours of close-quarters combat training in Earth's most hostile environments. To her left, Santos was engaged with 2 court-hacks simultaneously. The alien's superior reach and strength should have given them an overwhelming advantage, but Santos used every trick she'd learned fighting in Louisiana swamps. She led them into a patch of ground that looked solid but was actually a hidden bog. As the first alien sank to its chest in the murky water, Santos eliminated the second with a controlled burst from a rifle. She materialized behind the 4th court-hack like a ghost emerging from the jungle itself. The alien spun toward her, but Chin was already moving, using a massive tree trunk for cover while laying down suppressive fire that kept the enemy pinned against a wall of thorny vegetation. Okafor, meanwhile, was proving that engineers could fight as effectively as infantry when properly motivated. He had rigged an improvised explosive device using components from a scanner and several of Verdania's volatile seed pods. The resulting blast didn't kill the court-hack fighting Santos, but it disoriented the creature long enough for her to finish the engagement. When the firing stopped, 4 court-hack warriors lay dead or incapacitated, while all 4 humans were not only unharmed but barely breathing hard. The engagement had demonstrated something that would soon become legendary throughout the galaxy. Humans didn't just survive in hostile environments, they became apex predators. Status report, Rodriguez ordered as they quickly searched the fallen aliens for intelligence materials. "All green," Santos replied, already moving to establish security while the others worked. "Equipment function nominal," Okafor added, checking his gear. "The humidity sealing systems are working perfectly." Chun held up a court-hack communication device she'd retrieved from one of the bodies. "This might give us access to their tactical network." Rodriguez nodded, but her expression was grim. "We need to move immediately. That firefight will have been detected, and they'll send search teams." They began moving through the jungle with urgent purpose, putting distance between themselves and the engagement site. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of court-hack search teams crashing through the undergrowth, their heavy equipment and unfamiliarity with the terrain making them easy to track and avoid. As they moved, Okafor worked on the captured communication device. His engineering background proved invaluable as he managed to crack the alien encryption and tap into the court-hack tactical network. "Captain, You need to hear this, he said, holding up the device so they could listen to translated communications. The voice that emerged was clearly that of a senior court hack commander, and it carried notes of desperation that none of them had ever heard from the galaxy's most feared military force. Base Command, this is Sector Leader Vashtar. We have lost another patrol to the native hostiles. Our casualty rate has exceeded 60%, and equipment failure continues to compromise all operations. Another voice responded. Vashtar, High Command requires status update on resource extraction operations. Resource extraction has been suspended. We cannot maintain operational security with current force levels. Request immediate reinforcement or evacuation authorization. There was a long pause before the second voice responded. Reinforcements unavailable. Continue mission parameters until further orders. Rodriguez and her team exchanged glances. The court hack empire was abandoning their forces on Verdania rather than admit failure. There's more, Okafor said, adjusting the device to monitor additional channels. They're reporting similar problems on at least 12 other worlds. Jungle planets, swamp worlds, anything with hostile environmental conditions. Chen shook her head in amazement. They're losing this war one environment at a time. Not yet, Rodriguez corrected. But they're about to, if we can get this intelligence back to the Galactic Council. They continued moving through the night, using their knowledge of Earth jungle warfare to stay ahead of increasingly desperate court hack search teams. By dawn, they had reached the extraction point where Morrison and the rest of the team were waiting with grim expressions. Captain, Morrison reported, we've been monitoring court hack communications. They're planning something big, a massive push to clear the entire sector of what they're calling native resistance forces. Rodriguez felt a chill despite Verdania's oppressive heat. How massive? They're bringing in atmospheric processors and defoliation weapons, Park replied. They plan to strip the jungle bare and eliminate everything that's been causing them problems. Santos spat into the undergrowth. Bastards can't fight the jungle, so they're going to destroy it. When? Rodriguez asked. Morrison checked his captured communications intercepts. 72 hours. They're waiting for a supply convoy to arrive with the necessary equipment. Rodriguez felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. Their mission was reconnaissance, and they had gathered intelligence beyond their wildest expectations. The smart move was to call for extraction and report their findings to the Galactic Council. But the Council's response would take weeks, maybe months. By then, Verdania would be a lifeless rock, and the court hack would have learned how to counter environmental warfare. Humanity's advantage would be lost before it could be properly exploited. Captain, Chen said quietly, reading her expression, whatever you're thinking, we're with you. Rodriguez looked around at her team. 12 humans who had volunteered for what everyone expected to be a suicide mission, and instead found themselves in a position to potentially alter the course of an interstellar war. Morrison, what's the range on our communication gear? We can reach the transport ship, but they're 3 days out from the edge of the system. Not good enough. We need to contact Earth directly. Rodriguez pulled out her tactical computer and began running calculations. Okafor, can you boost our signal using court hack equipment? Possibly, but it would require getting close to their main communication array. The one at the base. That's the only one with enough power to punch through to Earth from this distance. Rodriguez stood up, her decision made. All right, people. Change of mission parameters. We're not just gathering intelligence anymore. We're actively disrupting court hack operations. Santos grinned, the expression fierce in her dirt-stained face. Now you're talking my language, Captain. The plan is simple, Rodriguez continued. We infiltrate the base, access their communication array, and send a priority message to Earth Command. Then we sabotage their atmospheric processors to buy time for reinforcements. Park shook his head. Captain, 12 people can't assault a fortified base, even a degraded one. We're not assaulting it, Rodriguez replied. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to turn their strengths against them and make the environment our ally. She spread out her tactical map, pointing to various locations around the court hack base. Okafor and Morrison will handle the communication hack. Santos and Chen will set charges on the atmosphere processors. Park and Williams will create diversions to draw security away from our primary objectives. And you? Santos asked. Rodriguez smiled grimly. I'm going to have a conversation with Sector Leader Vashtar. It's time the court hack learned what happens when you threaten a world that Earth considers under its protection. As her team began preparing for what could be humanity's first major offensive action in an interstellar war, Rodriguez reflected on how much had changed since Ambassador Chun had stood before the Galactic Council asking for humanity's chance to contribute. They had laughed at Earth's wilderness then, but after tonight, they would understand that Earth's children didn't just survive in hostile environments, they thrived in them. And they protected them with a ferocity that the galaxy had never seen. The court hack were about to learn that some teachers are more dangerous than any textbook could ever warn you about. Hashtag they laughed at Earth's wilderness. Part 5 6 months later, Ambassador Chin stood once again before the Galactic Council, but the atmosphere in the chamber was dramatically different. Where once there had been condescending laughter and barely concealed mockery, now there was respectful silence and barely concealed awe. High Counselor Cascad's scales had shifted to deep purple, the reptilian color of profound respect, as she addressed the assembled delegates. The Verdania operation represents a fundamental shift in our understanding of environmental warfare and its strategic applications. On the massive holographic display behind her, tactical recordings from the mission played in sequence. 12 humans moving through Verdania's hostile jungle like it was their natural habitat. Court hack forces, the galaxy's most feared military power, reduced to stumbling confusion by an environment that Earth's children navigated with supernatural grace. The human forces achieved objectives that our best military analysts deemed impossible, HFY continued. They not only gathered critical intelligence, but conducted offensive operations that resulted in the complete abandonment of court hack positions throughout the sector. Counselor Vex High, his crystalline form now pulsing with what could only be described as admiration, added his voice to the briefing. The intelligence gathered by Captain Rodriguez and her team revealed that the court hack empire has been systematically failing on 27 different worlds with hostile environmental conditions. This represents nearly 30% of their territorial acquisitions in the past decade. The ethereal collective's representative, that being of pure energy who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, now spoke with unmistakable respect. The humans didn't just survive in conditions that defeated our most advanced forces. They turned those conditions into weapons more effective than any technology we possess. Ambassador Chin listened with pride as the Council reviewed the cascading effects of the Verdania mission. The successful sabotage of the atmosphere processors had bought time for Galactic Council reinforcements to arrive. More importantly, the intelligence about court hack environmental vulnerabilities had led to a complete strategic revolution in the war effort. But the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity itself. The tactical recordings from a base infiltration operation have become required study material in military academies throughout the galaxy, HFY reported. The sight of human soldiers moving through hostile terrain while enemy forces struggle with equipment failures and environmental stress has fundamentally altered our understanding of what constitutes military superiority. On the display, security footage showed Captain Rodriguez and her team moving through the court hack base like ghosts. While enemy soldiers fought malfunctioning equipment and respiratory distress, the humans operated with clinical efficiency. The communication hack, the sabotage operations, the precision strikes, all conducted while the defenders struggled simply to function in an environment that was slowly killing them. The final engagement with Sector Leader Vashtar, Vexhai added, has become legendary. Chin smiled as the recording played. Rodriguez, covered in mud and jungle camouflage, confronting the court hack commander in his own command center. The alien warrior, despite his enhanced armor and biological advantages, backing away from a human female half his size because she had become something the court hack had never encountered before, a predator perfectly adapted to their environment. The conversation had been brief. Rodriguez informed Vashtar that his atmosphere processors had been destroyed, his communication arrays compromised, and his forces surrounded by hostile terrain they couldn't navigate. She gave him one choice: surrender to incoming Galactic Council forces or try to survive Verdania's jungle with failing equipment and no support. Vashtar had chosen surrender. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. The insectoid delegate clicked rapidly. Court-hack forces throughout Galaxy now fear environmental deployment. Human reputation spreads faster than tactical updates. HFY gestured toward Sean, her scales shifting to respectful gold. Ambassador, the Council has voted unanimously to approve Earth's request for expanded participation in the war effort. However, we find ourselves in the unusual position of requesting your guidance rather than offering limitations. Chun stepped forward, remembering the last time he had stood in this position. Then, he had been asking for humanity's chance to prove itself. Now, he was being asked to help the galaxy understand what they had unleashed. High Counselor, Earth appreciates the Council's confidence. Our military command has prepared recommendations for optimal utilization of human forces in the war effort. He activated his own holographic display, showing Earth's strategic assessment of the galactic conflict. Red zones marked court-hack strongholds on hostile worlds. Yellow zones indicated planets where environmental conditions could be exploited, and green zones showed optimal targets for human-led operations. Earth recommends the formation of specialized environmental warfare corps, with human advisors training multi-species units in hostile environment operations, Chin explained. We're not suggesting that humans replace existing military structures, but that we supplement them with capabilities that have been overlooked. The chamber buzzed with excited communications as delegates processed the implications. Species that had spent millennia developing advanced technology were being offered training in something far more basic: how to turn hostile environments from obstacles into advantages. Our analysis suggests that 40% of current court-hack positions become untenable if approached using environmental warfare principles, Chen continued. These aren't just jungle worlds like Verdania. Desert planets where their cooling systems fail, ice worlds where their power sources become inefficient, volcanic regions where their sensors malfunction due to electromagnetic interference. HFY's scales shifted through multiple colors as she processed this information. You're suggesting that the Empire's expansion strategy has a fundamental flaw. They've never learned to truly adapt to hostile environments. Exactly, Chen confirmed. They terraform worlds to suit their needs, or avoid worlds that can't be terraformed. They've never developed the capability to fight effectively in environments that resist their technology. The Mollusk Confederation's representative bubbled something that translated as profound realization. We've been trying to match their technology instead of exploiting their limitations. Chen nodded. Earth's contribution isn't better technology, it's better adaptation. Our soldiers don't just operate in hostile environments, they become part of them. As the session continued, Chen found himself fielding requests from dozens of species wanting to establish joint training programs with Earth's military. The planet that had once been dismissed as primitive was now being courted as the galaxy's most valuable strategic partner. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when they reviewed the broader strategic situation. The intelligence gathered on Verdania had led to coordinated attacks on 12 other court-hack strongholds. In each case, Galactic Council forces trained by human advisors had succeeded where previous attempts had failed. The war wasn't over, but for the first time since the court-hack empire had begun its expansion, they were losing territory instead of gaining it. Ambassador Chun, HFY said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our gratitude to Earth and our respect to Captain Rodriguez and her team. They have earned honors that will be remembered throughout galactic history. Chun accepted the formal recognition, but his mind was already on the future. Rodriguez and her original team were already training the next generation of human environmental warfare specialists. Volunteers from every Earth military were competing for positions in the new Galactic Environmental Corps. What had started as 12 soldiers on a reconnaissance mission had become a revolution in interstellar warfare. As the session concluded and Chun prepared to return to Earth with news of humanity's new role in galactic affairs, he reflected on the journey from that first laughing dismissal to this moment of profound respect. They had laughed at Earth's wilderness, dismissing it as a liability in a galaxy of advanced technology. But Earth's children had shown them that sometimes the most primitive environments produce the most sophisticated warriors. The jungle had been humanity's teacher, and now humanity was teaching the galaxy. In a war where technological superiority had seemed absolute, Earth had proven that adaptation, determination, and environmental knowledge could overcome any advantage. The Court-Hack Empire was learning a hard lesson. You can conquer civilizations with superior technology, but you cannot conquer worlds that fight back through their own children. And Earth's children, shaped by the most hostile and beautiful planet in the galaxy, were just getting started. The war would continue, but its character had fundamentally changed. Where once it had been a clash of technologies, it was now becoming a test of adaptation. And in that contest, humanity had found its place as the galaxy's most unlikely and most valuable teachers. The wilderness had made them strong. Now they would make the galaxy stronger. And the Court-Hack Empire, for all their advanced technology and military might, had no defense against an enemy that could turn any hostile environment into home field advantage. The age of environmental warfare had begun, and Earth stood at its heart.